Hey, everybody, welcome to the YMS podcast. This week, we are talking about gates, the importance of effective gate management. We've got some really interesting things we want to kind of bring to light about changes and updates that have happened in the YMS space as far as gates go and how uh, our system, Yard Management Solutions, has positioned ourselves to really assist with all kinds of different entry and exit situations. I am your host, Colin Mansfield. I am joined by your other host, Seve Carnera. Say hi to the people out there, Seve.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you,
We're,
Colin.
we're always happy to bring a new topic every 2 weeks about yard management space. We've talked about detention. We've talked about how YMS can assist with just visibility in the yard and what does that mean for decision making and what are new things happening in the industry. So today, as we dive into the importance of effective gate management, I wanted to talk about the role of gate management a little bit first, kind of define that, talk about how important it is, and this really is beneficial to think about within the context of the life cycle of a trailer in the yard. I've said that before. I'll say it again. What piece does the gate fit in as far as what's happening on either side of that? Well, when we think about the life cycle of a trailer, generally that's going to start as an appointment, right? Something that's scheduled to arrive at a facility at a given time and a given date. And when that asset arrives, then it needs to be checked in. It needs to be arrived, or it needs to be validated that it's supposed to be there. And in some cases, inspected. In some cases, things like seals we need to take pictures of seals. We need to take pictures of whether or not there's damage on that vehicle, etc. And then, of course, it moves into the yard and the rest of the yard operation happens. So that gate is really a crucial, critical component. It's the first interface between that asset that's arriving and the rest of the yard operations. It's almost like that first domino, and how that domino falls can dictate a lot that happens downstream, and the downstream effects either positive or negative with how quickly that asset can get processed. Seve, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit. You have over 10 years of experience specifically in the yard management space. You've worked with a lot of different companies, a lot of different solutions and providers, as well as customers. When you think about gate management, what are some of the most common challenges that you've seen operations face about managing the gates? Why do they come to a solution saying, hey, we need help?
Yeah, Colin. So that's a great point. So, one of the things that a lot of companies are looking at it is obviously trying to expedite the process. So, with a yard management solution, you really can't expedite that process because instead of writing down that information on pencil and paper, you can now enter that information on a system. And then to your point earlier, if you have appointments already scheduled with that solution as well too, a lot of that data is already provided to you when you bring up an appointment number. It can show you what trailer that is, what scat code, all the details about that particular unit that's arriving at the facility, meaning that the individual at that gate doesn't have to enter as much data into that arrival for that particular unit because that data is already available. So expediting or increasing the throughput at the gate is a key ingredient to that. In addition to that, there's other ways that those gate modules can help as well. And some of the shortcomings that I'll mention is that many times I've seen other solutions where in in spite of trying to expedite that process, they still include 20, 15 fields for that person to enter into that solution. You and I have had this conversation before. We try and minimize that as much as possible so that number one, the gate user doesn't get overwhelmed by all these fields that are on the solution. Secondly, it makes it a lot easier for them to identify which fields they need to enter information in. And many times, especially within our solution, a lot of times it's just noting down the seal if that trader's loaded, and then identifying where that trader's going to be parked within the yard. And when you make it that simple and that easy, it does expedite it, as well as using stuff like a tablet, for example, at the gate. When you can introduce those types of devices, that does also make the process a lot quicker and a lot easier for those gate users. And one other thing I want to point out as well too is that we're using the word gate, but a lot of times we can use that word synonymously as well too with shipping and receiving office, where some of these same types of activities occur in a shipping and receiving office, not necessarily out in front of the entry of the facility at the gate itself.
Yeah. Well, you bring up several good points. One of which is the different types of gates, right? So when we say gate, we
Yeah.
really just mean where is that asset entering or exiting the facility? Where is that check-in process happening? And that could be a standard guard shack and a gate arm, right? We see a lot of those. There were some funny ones that I posted on LinkedIn a little while ago about, Amazon has a guard shack that looks like a box with the tops open, which is kind of funny. I saw an igloo one that looks like one of those old school igloo coolers, you bring to the
Yep.
work site with you. We could also be talking about that shipping or receiving office, just like you mentioned, Seve. We see multi-lane gates where there's several lanes bringing in, some might be for personally owned vehicles, some might be for, straight trucks, some might be for trailers, and there's all different sort of variety of types. And there's even cases where there's driver self-check-in opportunities. We'll talk more about this a little bit later, but that can also be a form of a gate. Sometimes there's a simple barrier arm. Sometimes it's a very robust, very secure gate that could be on rollers or it can lift up, right? We see all kinds. And some of our customers even come to us and they say, "You keep saying gate. We don't have one. We're not a secure facility,
Yeah.
right? We don't have a gate around our perimeter. We don't have an entry or exit." And what I would say to that is, well, when trailers arrive, what's the first step, right? What needs to happen? Who do they go and talk to? I've even seen operations where that first step is they go straight to a dock door and they talk to an employee there. So really, it,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter so much the where it happens. It's really about the how and the process. Um, if I put myself in the mindset and sort of in the shoes of some of our customers before they bring on a YMS, what are they facing? You said it great, Seve. Paper and pencil. They're doing a lot, just trying to make things happen. They probably have some sort of list of who's supposed to be there, but that's not updated, right? And they got to take people's word for it if they arrive, and they're validating things like looking at driver's licenses, and they're looking at BOLs, and is this supposed to be? Are they supposed to be here? Is this the right time? There's a lot of chaos and a lot of just trying to make it happen, right? And we see that in other places of the yard as well. I also think about the stress at the gate, right? And how if you're really just trying to make it happen, but it is chaotic and it is disorganized, what that can mean for things like bottlenecks, what that can mean for a line of 10 or 15 frustrated drivers. By the time they get up to you, you've already lost the popularity contest, and they're just ready to go get into that facility. And from a individual's perspective, how that can, I'm sure, be very stressful and not make for the best work environment day to day. These are all challenges. These are all real things that companies face. And if you're listening to this podcast, you may face this or know somebody who does. I want to kind of segue into how does our system, YMS, enhance gate management? Seve gave you a bunch of teasers of ways that we help really get at efficiencies in the gate, and I love that. Um, in a nutshell, you know, yard management solutions and any good yard management system will provide an interface where employees can very simply and easily check in and check out assets. Seve, you mentioned appointments. That really expedites things, right? Having that information preloaded is a huge win. That's not always an opportunity that some facilities can take advantage of. Sometimes, a truck just arrives and they have delivery vehicles that come in and out all the time. Sometimes they don't get a heads up from a carrier far enough in advance to make that into the appointment system. And there's always cases where no appointments need to be dealt with and managed as well. Our
Hmm.
system provides a way to do that, and then also to your point earlier as well, consolidating those list of fields, right? So
Yep.
there, when you have to enter in information, it's very, very, very simple. I'm curious, Seve, what have you seen? I know you've been a big proponent of that first move, of focusing on that first move that happens from the gate into the yard. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that and why it's so important to get that right at the gate.
Yeah, great point, Colin. Because that to your point, that first move is critical for the entire operation and for that lifeline of that trailer while it's in the yard. And the reason for that is because you're really depending on that over-the-road driver of dropping that trailer in the position that they were asked to drop. Now, we all know drivers. Sometimes they'll go into a yard, they'll find an easy place to drop that trailer, and they'll drop it in that position. And in their minds, they've done what they were asked to do, and they'll leave the facility. Some facilities have very stringent rules as to where trailers are parked, based on is it empty, is it loaded, which customer is it a reefer unit, is it a dry unit? all sorts of different types of combinations. But essentially, that first move dictates where that trailer is in the yard and then also affects your inventory from a yard check perspective. After that, every move gets done by a yard truck. So, as a result of that, it's that first move that's critical in order to understand where that trailer is located in the yard. But to your point, the the big important thing here is that afterwards it's just yard trucks moving trailers from either to the yard to a dock door back out to the yard and vice versa. Obviously a little bit different from live loads, but that first move is always critical from a standpoint of understanding where that trailer was dropped within the yard.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's sort of those two halves to that first move, right? There's getting that trailer into the yard and then ensuring that it goes to the right location. And there's
Yeah.
strategies for dealing with each of those. Some of the strategies that we've seen and that we've implemented for customers for getting a trailer into the yard effectively, things like, for example, QR code scanning. Now, this isn't something that could work for every operation, but this is something we've seen work really well for those operations that own a significant portion of the assets that are in their yard. So if they, for example, are a trucking company, or they are a 3PL that works with one main customer and those assets are all that customer's assets, these are both good opportunities to go, hey, if we can store those assets information, the trailer numbers and the last known status and maintenance information, the last time they were inspected, and those sort of details about those loads in a database, then when those assets arrive at the facility, you can simply have a user scan a QR code with their smartphone or tablet at the gate, and that check-in process takes care of itself, right?
Mhm.
So that's number one. That's a great use case for owned assets. If you don't own your own assets and you're primarily working with carriers who are bringing in their assets or other assets that are not yours, there's other strategies. A great one we've seen, we'll talk about this more a little bit later as well, but automatic gate systems, allowing drivers to check themselves in through a touchscreen kiosk right there at the gate. This can reduce or eliminate the need for your own employees at the gate and provide over the road drivers a very easy interface to indicate, hey, I'm appointment 12345 and I've arrived, and the system tells them where to park. We've also seen tremendous opportunities for automation, getting trailers into the yard. Some of our customers, an interesting use case that I've seen is they'll check a trailer into sort of a holding area, like a gate waiting area or a receiving area, and then the yard drivers come and take care of that first move, right? So that the over the road driver doesn't have to be responsible for that. That can be automated, right? We can automate that first move to the correct location for a yard driver based on the status of the trailer, based on who owns it, based on if it's loaded or empty, if it's damaged or not. All of these things can go into automated rules to send that move request to a yard driver automatically so that you don't have to worry about a over-the-road driver putting it in the wrong location. So there's opportunities out there for all of these different areas. Seve, I wonder if you could take a minute to talk about that second half of that first move. If, and I just gave an example of maybe a specific use case, but once that trailer's into the yard, what have you seen work really well for getting it to that first location from the gate very effectively?
Yeah, so there's several options there, Colin. Obviously, we've partnered with other companies that have vision systems that can identify where those trailers are parked within the yard. That's turned out to be very effective as well too. So that's one method that can be done that way, so that you know exactly where that trailer is based on a vision system that can see where that trailer was parked. Other methods, obviously may include a yard check where you can go and update where those trailers are within the yard, and also, verifying through GPS coordinates on company-owned assets where those trailers are also placed in the yard. We have a couple of opportunities already in place with customers right now that we're actually taking that GPS data and introducing that and congesting it into our system so that we understand exactly where that trailer is within the yard. So there's a lot of different options there. Again, more effective and more beneficial, I believe, than RFID. RFID, again, we've talked about that, nauseum. It's not as accurate as most people think. But when you introduce things like GPS, even QR codes, like you mentioned, that does introduce a lot of added benefits as well as no additional cost to the customer as well too when they have those devices already in use on those units. The vision systems that I spoke about earlier, those are very cost effective solutions as well. And I for a long period of time was of the impression that it was very, very easy with containers to be able to use those vision systems to identify those traders in the yard. And that is very true. But since I've had multiple conversations with some of our vendors, I've learned that as well that some of those over the road traders that may not be as consistent with markings as far as scat codes and trader numbers have a very high level of accuracy now these days as well too. One vendor that I've spoken to recently was telling me that they're above the 95% threshold as well too. So that's extremely encouraging from that standpoint that we can actually identify those traders without the use of RFID tags, RFID readers, things of that nature, and instead rely on actual data that can be seen, for example, through a camera system.
Mhm. Well, up until very recently, um, you know, training an OCR software was very time consuming, very cumbersome, and
Yeah.
that still can be the case, right? There's still some training that has to happen with these systems, but now with AI, I mean, I think this is something we're seeing come out of this boom in AI that's been happening over the last year. Is OCR has really benefited from that. License plate reading and being able to scan what's numbers are on the side of a trailer, even if they're not consistently in the same location.
Yep.
That's gotten quite good, and that's, I mean, really a boon to everyone who is interested in those types of solutions. You mentioned integrations, and I want to dive into that a little bit deeper because a good call out here is that no two gate operations are exactly alike. There are lots of differences and lots of small tweaks that operations will make to try to get at efficiency in their gate methodology. As a YMS vendor, when we come in and we meet with a new customer, there's sort of two mindsets that we approach this with. And one is, what are you doing now? What is working really well now that you want to sustain, that you want to make sure is maybe even easier, that we can add some additional efficiency, grease the hinges a little bit, so to speak, and make it very simple, reduce friction. And then on the other hand, where are there opportunities to overhaul and maybe change or update processes so that you can take advantage of new technologies? And depending on a client's desire with both of those, we've got lots of recommendations we can give. Uh, a lot of times, what we provide with our solution out of the box or with some small tweaks to configurations can work great. Things like, we do the QR code scanning completely in house. We have an automatic gate system completely in house. If you were to take an automatic gate system, by the way, this is just I was running the numbers the other day. I wanted to mention this. If you were to implement an automatic gate system at a facility that has 2 full-time gate employees now, and you can reduce or remove the need for those 2 employees 24/7 hours a day. Let's say they're getting paid $22.50 an hour. That system alone in a year is going to save that operation $393,000, right? That's a good chunk of change, and that's only for 2 employees. A lot of gates we visit have 3 or 4 or more employees working per shift. So when you're thinking about solutions, keep that in mind. The ROI is not always as simple as just, how much faster is this making my operation, but where am I not having to put resources that I am now? And then on the other side, there's vendors out there that we work with. 2 of the vendors we've worked with, Eagle AI, they're a great company. They do a lot of the OCR that we've been talking about and are a great partner in this. Maybe one day we can have them on the show. That would be a lot of fun.
Yep.
And then another partner we've worked with is Certus Gates. Certus does a lot of ports. They have very large gate operations, and so some of our customers who have opted to go with them for the physical hardware of the gate still want to integrate with YMS to get the eagle view, the visual map of the facility, and take advantage of the automations in our solution. We're really agnostic. We want the best thing for the customer and the best solution at the best price point. So when you're thinking about as a company listening to Seve and I talk, and you're thinking about how can this work with our operation, what I would say is reach out to us and let's explore it together. Let's see what's going to work best based on what you have now and where you'd like to improve and what opportunities are out there. All right, so Seve, earlier you were talking about how some of the challenges associated with when an operation doesn't have a gate automation system or a yard management system or anything to help them, and they're doing everything on paper and pencil. I'm curious, as companies are looking for some way to help manage their gate processes, and they're looking for kind of the killer solution that's out there. What are some recommendations you would make for either, hey, this is what to look for, or this is what to look out for to help companies make these decisions for their operations?
Yeah, sure. So first off, Colin, what I typically ask is what type of data are you trying to consume on your end that you need to report on later on? So a good example of that, sometimes I run into sites that want a driver's license number for a driver. My first question is, what do you need that driver's license number for? And typically is if it's the answer is, well, we've always captured that information. I understand that, but what are you using that data for? Is there a way that we can just eliminate that because you're really not using that data for any other purpose other than just capturing it? So that's one big step, just identifying the right values that you need, input it into the system so that you can report on further down the road. So, minimizing those data entry points. Secondly, the use of tablets is so important at these gate operations. It really detaches those gate workers away from the physical gate itself, and it allows those gate workers to do things like inspection process at the gates. It benefits those customers when they do inspections, let's say, for example, a CT pat inspection, because now you digitize that process. And if you need to go look for a CT pat inspection that happened, a year ago, 2 years ago, you can actually go out and run a report in the system and get that information through the system. So you've captured all that information. The other thing as well too is that what I don't like about some solutions is that they're very good at capturing the data and doing the things that we just described, but those gate workers are physically actually writing down that information on pencil and paper, walking over to the gate, and then entering it into the solution. So again, you're basically just making that process even longer now because you're still doing it on paper and then having to input it into the system. I've seen some systems as well that require you to also add an RFID tag to that trailer on the arrival screen. What do those gate users have to do? They've got to walk over to the gate, scan that RFID tag physically over an antenna that's installed inside the gate so that that tag then appears on the screen with the correct tag number that's going to be associated to that gate. Again, I'm sorry, to that trailer. Again, that slows down that process. It really just takes away from the ability to use things like tablets to expedite that process. Uh, I've been very fortunate that I've felt that I've been a big proponent of pushing those types of solutions from the word go. Some of my first implementations were done with tablets at the gate, and I've pushed those types of solutions many a time with customers that I've dealt with and talked to. They absolutely love the ability to have those individuals at the gate not have to be tied down to that gate, and again, be able to walk around that unit. To your point, either scan QR codes with a tablet, scan a QR code, for example, or a barcode on a seal to be able to get that seal number correctly instead of somebody fat fingering that seal number. So there's a lot of different ways that we can incorporate those types of technologies into our solution so that it just again expedites that entire process and again makes the user experience much better for those individuals that are doing that type of work.
Great insights there. As you were talking, kind of two things jumped out at me as we start to wrap up this conversation. And one of them is, you know, we've said this before, you can't just throw a sensor or throw digitization at a process and expect it to automatically improve.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing that I've seen out sort of being marketed and advertised for as, hey, digitization, digitization. That's great. And the ability to take somebody off of paper and pencil, sure, absolutely, that's great. But the way that you do that could come with some sacrifices. And that's a good example that you just gave of, are you introducing another, route that employee has to walk, another location that employee has to be at in favor of digitization when in fact that may slow down the process more than it is now. Sure, you'll get the data on a computer, but what are you sacrificing with that? Um, so that's number one. Number two that I wanted to bring up is just the ability to have a system that is flexible, right? And flexibility is so crucial. I mentioned earlier kind of the two hands and how we look at what are your current processes and where might you want to change those. I would say if you're talking to any solutions vendor that is saying, you got to adapt your processes to our system. That's just how it goes. I would say maybe take stock and look at, is that going to be the most valuable system for you? And I'll give an example. We've had several customers come to us and say, look, we love your gate solution. We love, that piece of the YMS. The problem is that, yes, we have a gate, but it's not run by our employees. We have a third-party security corporation, or security guards that don't work for us, but are, hired just to protect the facility. And so we don't have any oversight really over them. We can't hold them accountable. They're just there to make sure that the wrong people don't get on site, and they don't really even care where the trailers go once they're in at that operation. Um, Going with a solution that says, well, it has to happen at that physical gate location is going to open up a world of hurt, right? Because you're going to have to train employees that aren't yours and hold accountable employees that aren't yours. And that's, from what I've seen, very challenging and often not ideal. Instead, pursuing a solution that has flexibility, like yard management solutions, that allows you to go, okay, we're going to allow that gate employee that gate guard that doesn't work for your operation to do their security check, and you could pick, do you want that to happen in the solution or not? And then the actual check-in process could happen at the receiving office or after that trailer has been led into that facility. We've had customers again say, okay, gate guard, what you're going to do is always check in that trailer to the same location, and then our employees later on will decide where that asset moves, that first move in the yard. That's another great solution. So flexibility is key, and ensuring that you're not being forced to participate in a workflow that is not ideal for your type of operation. All right, now to wrap up, just to highlight a few of the key points, we talked about at the beginning how there's many different kinds of gates and there's many different kinds of solutions. Seve, I wonder if you could wrap us up a little bit, maybe with some insight into what you've seen customers give you feedback on after they implement. Leave us here on a good note with some cheery news from the customer side.
No, sure, Colin. So, a lot of things that I've seen in the past as well too is that, again, we can configure our solution to do a certain arrival process for a certain type of equipment type, for example. So, if you pick a dry trailer versus a reefer trailer, the entry points for the data that you want are different based on the two different types of equipment. And that in and of itself is a great time saver for individuals that may be receiving or arriving a dry trailer that don't need to see all the reefer unit data fields on that same screen. Again, it eliminates the need for additional information to be scanned or looked at, and also eliminates bad entry into the system based on a user not completely understanding the entire process and then adding bad data into a process for an arrival on a dry trailer versus a reefer trailer. So those are great ways of doing that. And again, the use of QR codes, tablets, anything you can use at the gate to expedite that process, vision cameras, those are always big benefits that customers love. And I've talked to several customers that have shared with me how much that process have improved, how quickly they can then have much bigger or faster throughput at the gate, both on the inbound and outbound side. And again, instead of having a line of traders at the gate that sometimes get out into the roadway where sheriffs or other, the police departments can come around and give tickets for, that process is basically inclusion. The inclusion of that process is now creating faster arrivals, turnaround is quicker, and you don't no longer have those issues with traders sticking outside of the yard trying to get into the facility.
That's a great call out. I had a customer that went live in December who messaged me and they said, this is incredible. We used to have only paper, right? Everything was on paper. And now we have officially given out our last piece of paper. We are totally digital. Everything is tracked automatically. Thank you guys for your help.
Yep.
And there's nothing better than that, man. There's nothing better than getting that news from a customer and knowing that not only is the customer happy from the dollars and cents standpoint, but also each and every one of those employees that are working at that gate. Now maybe we can infuse just a little bit more of ease of use and happiness into their work lives. And that's really why we do this. So thank everybody for listening or watching to this episode. We really appreciate it. We're going to be back here in another 2 weeks with a new topic surrounding yard management. If you'd like to learn more about our solution and you'd like to maybe even see how we could implement to benefit your operation, you can go to our website, yardmanagementsolutions.com. There's a link on the top right that says schedule a demo. You click that, our team will be happy to sit down, talk through with you one-on-one, learn about your operation, see how we can help. I'd also ask, if you're listening to this on audio platform, please give us a review, like the show, give us a 5-star rating. And if you're watching this on YouTube, give us a like, give us a subscribe, share it with your friends. We'd love to, get to know anybody who's watching this or listening to this. Leave a comment. We'd be happy to answer. Until next time, thank you all so much, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.